Welcome to Forbidden Texts. What you are about to see may shock you. It may surprise you, but will definitely challenge everything you thought you knew. Stick around until the end to discover the forbidden knowledge that they don't want you to have.
You thought awakening would feel like bliss. Light, peace, purpose. But what if the truth is, it breaks you first? What if the path to higher consciousness isn't a mountaintop, but a graveyard of everything you once believed was you? Welcome to Forbidden Texts, where we explore ancient knowledge and forgotten wisdom. This is the part no one posts on Instagram. No sage quotes. No glowing auras, just silence, confusion, and a feeling like your soul has flatlined. People don't talk about this phase, not because it's rare, but because it's terrifying. It's not marketable. It doesn't sell courses or retreats. But it's real, and it's happening to more people now than ever before. You wake up. You meditate. You journal. You align your chakras. You raise your vibration. And then, nothing. You can't feel the light anymore. Your old beliefs don't fit. Your job feels hollow. Friends feel distant. Even joy feels fake. Like you're watching yourself smile through glass. And deep inside, something whispers, "This is the end." But it's not. This is the doorway. The secret rite of passage hidden in every true spiritual path. The mystics knew it. The saints wrote poems about it. But today, most of us stumble into it without a map. In this journey, you're going to find out why the darkness comes after the light. Why people who are spiritually awake can fall into despair. And why this breaking might be the most sacred thing that's ever happened to you. Because if you can walk through it, what's waiting on the other side isn't just light. It's truth. Everyone wants the glow up. No one wants the disintegration. We're sold a version of awakening that looks like a lifestyle upgrade. A better morning routine. A vision board with a Tesla and a soulmate. Maybe a crystal grid on the side. But real awakening doesn't care about your curated peace. It doesn't care about your spiritual identity. In fact, it comes to destroy it. That's the part they leave out. The ancient texts didn't speak in hashtags. They spoke of fire, of wilderness, of nights where the voice of God was silent and everything inside you screamed. But today, spirituality has been rebranded. Marketed, filtered. It's a highlight reel of serene retreats and sound baths. We've turned enlightenment into an aesthetic. The truth is, the path isn't always love and light. Sometimes, it's ash and absence. The first mistake people make is assuming that spiritual awakening equals eternal bliss. That once you've had that breakthrough, seen through the illusion, felt the oneness, you're done. Enlightened, upgraded. But the awakening is only the spark. What follows is the burn. The old self doesn't step aside politely. It clings. It begs. It fights. And when you try to hold on, that's when the darkness sets in. And it's not dramatic. It's quiet. That's what makes it worse. It's a loss of feeling. A spiritual numbness that no mantra can fix. You try to go back, watch your favorite teachers, read your favorite books, but none of it lands. But what if this isn't a failure at all? What if the fall is part of the ascent? Because buried in the forgotten pages of mystic writings, there's a different story. One they never told you. One that changes everything. Keep watching. By the end, you'll see why this darkness might be the proof that something deeper is waking up. Not dying, not failing, transforming. There's a name for this silent collapse. A name that's echoed through monasteries, deserts, and the torn journals of mystics. The dark night of the soul. Not a metaphor, not a mood, a spiritual phenomenon, a sacred unraveling. First written about by St. John of the Cross in the 16th century, this wasn't some poetic flourish. It was a manual for survival, etched from the inside of his own spiritual breakdown while imprisoned in a monastery cell. Starving, forgotten. He described it not as a punishment, but as a purifying fire, a divine strategy. The soul, he wrote, must be emptied of all attachments, not just to the world, but to the self's idea of God. Think about that. Even your highest ideals get torn down. The dark night is not depression. It's not burnout. It's not just low vibe. It's a dismantling of the scaffolding your soul once used to make sense of reality. You don't just lose interest in things. You lose your compass. Prayer doesn't work. Meditation turns to static. You feel exiled from the divine. And that's the point. Because the part of you that's suffering, the part that's desperate for the light, is the part that has to die. The ego dressed in spiritual robes. The self-image you didn't even know you were still clinging to. It's not that God is gone. It's that the version of God you were attached to was never real to begin with. In mystical traditions around the world, the same pattern shows up. A journey into light, followed by a descent into darkness. The Sufi poet Rumi called it the night that delivers you to the dawn. The Desert Fathers called it the cloud of unknowing. Buddhists call it the falling away of the self. But in every case, one truth remains. Before the soul can be reborn, it must be emptied. This isn't punishment. It's precision. A sacred surgery. And in a time when more and more people are waking up. More are falling into this silence. And they don't know what it is. They think they're broken. They're not. They're crossing a threshold older than religion. And if you felt it too, keep watching. Because soon, we'll uncover the hidden signs that this isn't madness. It's initiation. You won't know you're in it at first. It doesn't come with a label. There's no warning shot. Just a quiet shift, like the air goes stale around your life. What once felt alive now feels scripted. Your spiritual practices, the rituals that used to fill you, now feel like going through the motions. You're not angry. You're not sad. You're just hollow. And that's what makes it so disorienting. You tell yourself it's just a phase. You try harder. You double down on the practices. Cleanse your energy. Read new books. Chant louder. Meditate longer. But nothing gets through. It's like shouting into a void. Eventually, you stop trying. Not out of laziness, but out of exhaustion. You've hit the wall no one warned you about. And this is where the panic sets in. You wonder, have I lost my connection to the divine? Was it ever real? Have I regressed? But what if the stillness isn't the absence of God, but the presence of something deeper moving beneath the surface? The dark night has signs, but they don't look like what you'd expect. You might feel isolated, even among people you love. You might feel like a fraud, like your inner world no longer matches the words you speak. You might find no joy in the things that used to bring you meaning, art, purpose, even love. And the most painful sign, the silence. Not just from the world, but from within. The silence of intuition. The silence of guidance. The silence of presence. This is not depression. This is not a clinical state. Though it can mimic those patterns, this is something more existential. It's like your soul is being pried open. But here's the secret. This silence is not empty. It's full of intelligence. It's rearranging you, burning through the noise, tearing away every spiritual mask you didn't know you were wearing. And if you're in this space, this raw, quiet ache, know this, you're not alone. You're not going backward. You're being initiated into a mystery so deep, words can't reach it. Soon, we'll go deeper. We'll explore why so many hide this part of the journey, and why pretending everything is love and light only prolongs the pain. Manifesting miracles, raising the collective frequency. But what happens when the light goes out and you can't fake it anymore? This is the part where most people go silent. Not because they don't feel anything, but because they feel too much. Too much doubt. Too much grief. Too much shame. Especially shame. Because the unspoken rule in modern spirituality is, if you're struggling, you're doing it wrong. So you hide it. You smile through the ache. You post affirmations while secretly wondering if you're spiritually defective. But you're not broken. You're shedding. And the reason people don't speak up during the dark night is because they're terrified of being exiled from the very communities that once gave them hope. Try telling a group a network error occurred. Please check your connection and try again. If this issue persists, please contact us through our help center at help. Open.com. Try telling a group of love and light seekers that you don't feel connected anymore. That meditating feels like drowning. That prayer feels like talking to a wall. Watch how fast the advice starts. Raise your frequency. Clear your energy. Just think positive. They mean well, but they don't understand. Because this isn't a glitch in your vibration. It's a rupture in your identity. You're not losing your connection to the divine. You're losing your illusion of control. And that is terrifying, especially in a world where spiritual success has become a performance. This is the secret struggle, the one behind the scenes. Behind the mala beads, the incense, the perfectly filtered sunrise meditations, the struggle of the spiritually awake, who feel like they're silently falling apart. And no one sees it, because you look like you have it together. You've read the books. You speak the language. You know how to package your pain in poetic terms. But inside, you're empty. Not because you failed, but because something deeper is trying to be born. And birth doesn't look graceful. It looks like screaming. It looks like silence. It looks like surrender. In ancient traditions, this phase was understood. It was expected. It was honored. But today, we've forgotten that darkness is part of the path. Not a detour. Not a punishment. A rite of passage. And if you're in it, if you're holding yourself together by threads of silence, trying to remember who you were before the light went out, you are not alone. You're not off course. You're exactly where transformation begins. Next, we go deeper into the mechanics of this breaking and how the psyche tries to survive what the soul is trying to complete. Because the pain you're feeling is not the end. It's the pressure before the breakthrough. The mind calls it a breakdown. The soul calls it a breakthrough in disguise. But here's the brutal truth. The line between spiritual crisis and psychological collapse is razor thin. And most people, especially in the West, have no language for it. We pathologize what mystics once honored. We label sacred disintegration as dysfunction. And in doing so, we miss the most important clue. The dark night isn't here to destroy your mind. It's here to unhook it from what it thinks is real. This is where psychology and spirituality collide. Because when the soul starts unraveling the false self, the ego panics. It doesn't care if the mask is killing you. It only cares that it's familiar. And so it fights. It clings to stories. I'm losing my mind. I'll never be whole again. I'm slipping into nothing. And in a way, you are. But that nothing is everything the ego was built to avoid. Silence. Stillness. Surrender. Modern psychology calls it an identity crisis. But ancient mystics called it purification. And here's what no one tells you. Even your spiritual identity, your beliefs, your practices, your rituals can become a prison.
A quick message. This space has become something truly special for many of us. A community of people on a shared journey of spiritual growth, healing, and awakening. Your comments and stories inspire me every day, and it's clear there's so much more we can create together, especially since this path can feel lonely at times. That's why we've created a spiritual space on Patreon, a sanctuary for deeper connection, exclusive content, and meaningful conversations with others from this channel who share your journey. Together, we can build something uplifting, authentic, and spiritually powerful. If this resonates with you and you'd like to be part of something bigger, whatever you're going through, you'll find the link in the description or pinned in the comments. Your membership not only helps support the channel, but also helps grow this beautiful community. Let's create something amazing together.
The mind builds altars to certainty. The soul burns them down. This is why the dark night can mimic depression, anxiety, even psychosis. But it's not a disorder. It's a dismantling. It's your soul evicting every false god it ever knelt to, including the idea of who you're supposed to be. And it's terrifying because the ego wants resolution, a fix, a clear path forward. But the soul wants truth. And truth doesn't arrive as comfort. It arrives as fire. This fire burns through the layers you built to survive, so that what remains is not a version of you that fits, but a version that's free. We're not done yet. Because buried in this darkness are ancient voices, sages and mystics who knew exactly what this was. And they left us clues. Not to escape the night, but to walk through it, eyes wide open. Centuries before the word awakening became a buzzword, mystics were already mapping this terrain in blood, silence, and poetry. Saint John of the Cross wrote of it from a prison cell, wrapped in rags, starving, left to rot by his own religious brothers. And yet, he wrote verses so luminous, they still shake the soul in darkness and secure by the secret ladder, disguised. O night that guided me, O night more lovely than the dawn. He wasn't writing metaphors. He was describing spiritual annihilation, the complete absence of God's presence. And in that silence, something ancient was happening, the stripping of the false self. Teresa of Avila called it the prayer of quiet, a space where all effort dissolves, where even the longing for God must die, so that only God remains. She wrote of unbearable dryness, a state where no vision, no miracle, no sense of presence could be felt. And yet, she said this silence was the most intimate touch of the divine. The Sufi mystic Rumi spoke of the same night. Don't run from the grief. O soul, look for the remedy inside the pain. For the mystics, the dark night was not darkness as we think of it. It was a divine eclipse. The light didn't disappear. It became too close to see. They weren't broken. They were being dismantled by something infinitely more intelligent than their own will. And here's what matters now. They didn't resist it. They surrendered. They leaned into the loss of self. And what emerged from that silence was not a better version of who they were, but someone entirely new. They became vessels, not for belief, but for truth. and their voices still echo. Not to give you comfort, but to give you context. Because what you're facing now, you're not the first. You're not alone. And as we move deeper into the night, you'll begin to see this darkness doesn't destroy the soul. It reveals it. Suffering becomes alchemy in the dark night. Not all at once. Not in a flash of insight or a sudden shift in mood. It's slower, brutal, honest. It's a process that doesn't ask for your permission. The pain doesn't go away when you get it. It goes away when there's nothing left to burn. The reason the dark night hurts isn't just because you're lost. It's because something inside you is dying, and it won't stop until it's gone. And the thing that's dying isn't your light. It's the version of you that needed the light to feel worthy. This is the fire that purifies. It doesn't destroy the soul. It destroys everything that isn't the soul. In ancient initiations, this was the underworld, the shaman's sickness, the sacred wound. They didn't try to escape it. They understood that the soul doesn't grow through comfort. It grows through collapse, through the agony of not knowing who you are anymore, through the silence of prayers that go unanswered, through the hunger that no ritual can satisfy. This is the soul's descent, the sacred dismemberment. And here's the paradox. It's in this dismembering that the real self begins to form. Not the ego, not the image, but the raw, wordless center that was buried under beliefs, trauma, achievements, even your spirituality. Everything that was performative falls away. Everything that was borrowed gets returned. And what remains is real. You stop pretending to be awake. You start being empty. And from that emptiness, something sacred begins to breathe. It's not flashy. It's not loud. But it's unshakable. You stop needing proof. You stop needing signs. You stop needing to feel good all the time. Because you're no longer chasing the light. You've become the space it moves through. And in the stillness that follows, you'll realize this wasn't destruction. It was resurrection. Next, we'll look at the traps that pull people out of this process too soon, and why chasing comfort in the middle of sacred suffering might be the most dangerous thing of all. This is where most people turn back. Right when the darkness starts to strip them raw, they reach for light. Any light. A new mantra. A new healer. A new identity. Because the dark night doesn't just strip your ego, it strips your coping. And that's terrifying. So the impulse kicks in. Escape. Enter the trap of spiritual bypassing. It looks like enlightenment. Sounds like wisdom. But underneath, it's fear wearing a white robe. It's the need to feel good instead of being real. It's masking pain with platitudes. It's trading transformation for appearance. You've seen it. People who've built their entire identity around being spiritual, but can't sit in silence with their own emptiness. They talk about surrender, but only if it feels expansive. They talk about healing, but only if it leads to bliss. They talk about ego death, but only as a concept, not a lived experience. So when the real dismantling begins, they panic. They label it low vibration. They call it a test, a block, a glitch in the manifestation process. And they start building a new mask, a brighter one. But here's the cost. The light they build isn't anchored. It flickers every time life gets real. Because they skip the most essential step, staying in the dark long enough to see what it reveals. The dark night doesn't need fixing. It needs presence. It needs silence. It needs the courage to sit in the ruins without reaching for paint. Because only when you stop trying to escape the night can the soul begin to speak. And it won't speak in words. It will speak in stillness. In clarity that arrives without thought. in peace that has no reason to exist. The ego will scream for resolution. The world will tell you to fix it. But the soul will wait. It knows. This isn't a detour. This is the path. And if you stay, if you resist the urge to rebuild too soon, what rises from the ashes won't be a new version of you. It'll be the part that never needed protecting in the first place. Next, we'll step into that space, the quiet after the storm, and uncover what it means to rebuild not a self, but a soul in full. Something changes when the fire has finished its work. Not suddenly, not dramatically, but unmistakably. The silence stops feeling like absence. It starts to feel like space. You're not rushing to fill it anymore. You're not trying to feel aligned. You're not trying at all. Because for the first time, you realize there's nothing left to prove. You begin to see life without the filter of your spiritual identity, without the story of awakening, without needing every experience to mean something cosmic. You stop chasing transcendence and start embodying presence. This is the slow rebirth, the reconstruction that doesn't come from the mind, but from something deeper, something that's always been there, underneath the noise. You eat differently. You speak differently. You listen more. You need less. Not because you're trying to be mindful, but because the grasping has died. You're no longer addicted to light. You're rooted in truth. And truth doesn't glitter. It grounds. From the outside, nothing looks extraordinary. You're not floating through life in a perpetual state of bliss. But there's a stillness now, a clarity, a quiet strength that doesn't shout. And people feel it. Not because you say profound things, but because you've stopped performing. You've returned to something more honest, more raw, more real. This isn't the spiritual high. It's the sacred low. The place where heaven touches dirt, and you realize they were never separate to begin with. You stop living to be awake. You start living to be here. The irony is, nothing outside of you has changed, but everything inside has. Because now, you don't need to be saved. You don't need to be healed. You don't need to become anything. You just need to remember who you are when all the stories fall away. And what's left isn't light, isn't dark. It's you, unfiltered, unfinished, free. But this awakening doesn't end with you. Because as more people step into this silent rebirth, something collective begins to stir. Next, we go there, into the rising undercurrent, the quiet revolution of souls who've walked through fire and come back carrying truth. Something's happening beneath the noise. Not on stages, not in headlines, not in spiritual circles built on branding, but in the lives of ordinary people quietly falling apart and coming back changed. They're not preaching. They're not selling. They're just living from a depth most people don't know exists. Because once you've passed through the dark night, you stop needing to explain yourself. You see the world differently, not with new beliefs, but with new eyes. You recognize the pain behind the performance. You hear the hollowness in spiritual cliches. You feel who's real, without words. And you start noticing others like you. Not gurus, not influencers, just people who've been broken open and didn't run. There's a kind of quiet in them. Not because they have answers, but because they're no longer pretending to. This is the hidden network. A global undercurrent of souls who've walked through the void and now walk differently through the world. They're not trying to wake people up. They're not trying to fix anything. They're simply embodying truth. And truth is contagious. It doesn't shout. It doesn't convert. It doesn't chase. It draws. And maybe that's why you're here. Not for more information, but because part of you recognizes this. You've felt it rising in you, even when you tried to bury it under books, practices, or performances. It doesn't care about your labels. It doesn't care about your plans. It wants you, unprotected, unperformed, real. And the more people who answer that call, the more the old structures start to crumble. Not with noise, but with stillness. Not with anger, but with clarity. This is the quiet revolution, a rewilding of the soul. No leader, no doctrine, no brand, just truth, waking up inside the broken and reshaping the world from the inside out. And now we return to where we began, because there's one more thing you need to know. The final piece that brings it all together. The reason you were brought into the night and what it was always leading you toward.